The ANC has reiterated its criteria for selecting candidates for parliament and provincial legislatures. The party had previously announced that it wanted all its candidates to have post-matric qualifications, among other prerequisites. The chairperson of its electoral commission, Halima Motlanthe, outlined the details during the party's manifesto review wrap.
A minimum requirement for serving as an MP or MPL is that candidates must preferably possess a post-matric qualification and or have the capacity, experience, education or expertise that will enable them to make a constructive contribution in the relevant legislature or executive. 2, all candidates must have completed the 4 OR Tambo Leadership School online modules before being registered with the Independent Electoral Commission.
Well, for more on the story, I'm now joined by our guest, Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, Director at the Center for Advancement of Non-Racialism and Democracy at the Nelson Mandela University. Professor, always good to catch up with you. Now, would you provide more details on the eligibility criteria set by the ANC for members aspiring to be nominated as candidates for Parliament and provincial legislatures?
Thank you very much, Hugo, for having me, and good evening to your viewers. Let me start off by saying that in principle, what the ANC is saying is correct, but timing is of essence here, because we have elections coming in 2024, and then if they only start the process now to put together these requirements, the question is, will all the members be in a position to meet those requirements? For example, when Halima Motlanthe says that one of the requirements is that members of the ANC who want to stand for office must have gone through the OR School of Leadership, then was that information conveyed to them on time for them to be able to register for the cause, complete it on time, and then when the nomination process starts, then at least they will have met that requirement. That in itself might create a problem if this was an afterthought and then the decision was only taken at the 11th hour when there is not enough time for those members to be able to meet that requirement. But in principle, the argument is valid, and the argument is in fact in order, provided, of course, that the time factor was indeed considered when this decision was taken.
It's early days yet, but do you have a suspicion that many members of the ANC may not have some of these qualifications? Firstly, and secondly, do you suspect that there might be a grace period, or is it effective from the very next election?
You know, Hugo, the questions you're asking are both important for one reason. One, here we're talking about the ANC, but the reality is that it's not only the ANC that has politicians who are not, in fact, meeting the requirement, the basic requirements of being able to read the documents that are presented to them. You recall that a few weeks ago, a study was released showing that a number of office bearers, more especially at municipal level, cannot read the documents that are given to them. So the question is, if you cannot read the document and then grasp what is contained therein, how are you going to make an input? How are you going to market that document to your constituency? That becomes a problem. So in this case, the ANC is saying that for one to stand for office, that person must have gone through the leadership school, which is correct. And then, of course, the understanding is that they will have done the calculations to estimate that by time X, all those people would have met that requirement. But if that has not been done, then it becomes a problem. Then the other issue, of course, is with regards to this question that you're asking about the grace period. Why would you come up with a grace period if indeed you thought about this thing from the onset? If it was an afterthought, obviously then you'll have to give people the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, you would have taken this course if you had known, but you didn't know, so we'll allow you this time around, but going forward, this will be the requirement. So in other words, we'll have to know when is the starting point. Are they starting with the forthcoming elections, or are they preparing for other elections to come? Those are the questions that only the leadership of the ANC will be able to assist us. But the principle, as I say, is absolutely correct. And all other parties, in fact, should do the same. I supported Zwakele Mngwango from the then DA when he was saying that if you want to be chief whip of the party, at least you must have a junior degree. He was right. I remember writing a piece about that, and people said, I'm supporting the idea. I said, no, I don't have to support any party, but I support the idea. The idea was a genuine one then, as it is a genuine one now, provided it is done correctly.
So when we do an analysis, and I'm sure you've done this, Professor, of why this process has suddenly come around, what goes through your mind as what's led to it? Because, I mean, you raise the issues of many of the cadres of the ANC that have been deployed to various municipalities across the country, and they're unable to read a balance sheet. They're unable to give the citizens or the members of that community what they deserve in terms of service, because they do not have a thorough understanding of numbers and other things, I suppose.
Yeah, you know what, my brother? Here is a problem. Factionalism in the ANC is a problem. And we have seen this starting to crop in other political parties. The NFP is a case in point. The IFP recently were a similar situation. So factionalism is killing our politics as a country, not just as the ANC. So now if the majority of those who meet that requirement happen to be coming from one faction, that is going to derail the plans of the party on renewal, because they've announced on several occasions that they've embarked on a project to renew the party. But you cannot renew the party if the foundation is weak. If, for example, you have identified a potential candidate and you have seen that the majority of them belong to Faction A, and therefore they will meet the threshold, and then others are in Faction B, and therefore they are going to be disqualified, of course that is a recipe for disaster. But if you are starting from a clean slate and saying, comrades, we want to renew our party, and part of this renewal process means that all of those who are standing for office must be found to be in good standing in terms of them being able to read the documents that are given to them, either by the governing party or documents that are produced by opposition political parties. Because it will be a shame to go to a municipal office, to go to a provincial office, to go to the National Assembly, reading documents that have been crafted by other political parties, and you can't make sense of the document simply because you cannot understand basic English, which happens to be the language of communication, or the lingua franca, as people would say. So that is a starting point. But if factionalism creeps in and then you identify people who are most likely to do better, then of course that is a problem. And that is a problem that is going to haunt the ANC if they didn't think about it at the onset.
Prof, the ANC's criteria mentions that candidates must have no criminal record or charges against them. How will the party handle cases where members have been accused but not convicted or are facing private prosecutions? And it comes back to the issue that you mentioned earlier, and that's the issue of factionalism within the party, or individuals coming up with rules and regulations in order to almost muscle or jostle other members out of contention.
You know, my brother, there is a problem here. You have the Integrity Committee of the ANC, whose responsibility is to check the extent to which its members are in good standing. And then if there is any accusation leveled against a member of the organization, that member has to approach the Integrity Committee, or will have to be summoned to appear before the Integrity Committee. Now, if you belong to the quote-unquote correct faction, chances are they will give you a slap in the face, or they will put you in the clear and say that, no, there is nothing untoward that you did, when we all know you did something wrong. And then if you happen to be in Faction B, which is the wrong faction, it doesn't really matter whether you have done something wrong or not. They might still find you guilty. So basically, my standpoint here is that the Integrity Committee of the ANC must first have integrity itself. Because if it has integrity, it is going to treat matters that are tabled before it objectively and fairly, without being influenced by factional politics. The moment they factor in factionalism in the organization when they deliberate on these issues, then that is not going to end well. So the onus, therefore, is on the leadership of the ANC to embark on this renewal process, and then be fair and frank and open on everything that they do, and make sure that they don't factor in this factionalism, because if they do that, as I say, that will be a recipe for disaster.
Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, Director of the Center for Advancement of Non-Racialism and Democracy at the Nelson Mandela University. Appreciate your time and insights as we were conversing on the eligibility criteria set by the ANC for members aspiring to be members of Parliament.